All right, first of all, we want to thank everybody for being here today as the Urban Alliance meets in the great city of Wisconsin Rapids. We're very proud to have Mayor Verwink as part of our organization. I'm going to ask each of the mayors behind me to introduce themselves really quickly so the press knows who's all here. Let's start to my right.
Justin Nichols, the Mayor of the City of Manitowoc.
Gene Rosine, Mayor, City of Kaukauna.
Joe Barwick, the Mayor of Merrill.
And obviously the Honorable Zach Verwink, who's going to be talking in just a second. We're here to talk about the historic tax credits and I'm really applauding the governor's efforts to lift the ban that they had, the moratorium on the tax credits. And the reason why is twofold. First of all, we're very proud of the fact that the governor and the legislature worked with the mayors to extend and create the historic tax credit. It allows us to compete statewide against all the other states around us that had a historic tax credit, but we couldn't compete with them because developers need that. It helps to incentivize developers to come into town, but it also takes away the risk that they're dealing with. So we're really proud of the fact that we worked with the legislature on a bipartisan effort to get the tax credits in and expanded. And now we're seeing over 20 cities and municipalities throughout the state of Wisconsin that are looking for or already utilizing historic tax credits, including my hometown of Racine, Wisconsin, where we just announced a $60 million development thanks to this, in part to this historic tax credit. So we want to thank the governor for that. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means for cities and municipalities and jobs in this state. But first of all, I want to recognize the Honorable Mayor Zach Verwink and have him talk a little bit about Wisconsin Rapids and why we're here today. Mayor?
Thanks, Mayor. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to those that are not here. Welcome to Wisconsin Rapids. And those that are from here, we've got some developers in the room, business owners downtown, who have taken leaps of faith to enter in what can be seen as a risky market, a risky venture in a downtown sort of development. So welcome. We move our sessions around the state for many reasons, and I think one of which is to see different communities in which we represent, that we're elected to represent. We each have similar sort of requirements and expectations to deliver services, but we're each different. But one common theme is the fact that we are faced with the challenge of economic growth. And that's something that as mayors of different cities, we care obviously deeply about, and it's our first and primary responsibility. But today, gathered to talk really about the historic tax credit and a community like Wisconsin Rapids, which has seen the demolition of a number of historic buildings throughout recent years, primarily because of just the hurdles and the expense of rehabbing and revitalizing those buildings. So we're very pleased to see the governor lift the ban for us. So developers such as those in Wisconsin Rapids are able to step and make investments that they may not otherwise make. You know, our downtowns and historic districts really are the cornerstone of our communities, and any walk in the downtown of any community really will be a story of its past and where it has been, but also an illustration, I think, of where it's going. And Wisconsin Rapids is not unique in that. Specifically the building that we're in today, as you can see, it's a vacant building. It's in our downtown, and some may think the building should be torn down just because it's vacant or needs too much investment to get back in on the market. But the historic tax credits could make this project and other projects viable in our community. So we're very excited about that. And I think, you know, as mayors, we're obviously looking for opportunities to work and partner with the state, for the legislature to realize and the governor to realize that some of these efforts are partnerships, that we can't do these things alone. While we're expected to deliver on the economic growth promises that we make in our own communities, it requires resources and it requires partnership and assistance from the state as well. So again, thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad that you all are here and the mayors could join. And I'm pleased that the City of Wisconsin Rapids continues to believe in the Urban Alliance and the need to connect with other mayors across the state to work together to be a united voice in making sure that projects and opportunities like the historic tax credit really become part of our fabric and our future of our redevelopment opportunities. So thank you. Mayor?
Let me take a second to describe what the historic tax credits are and what they mean. The historic tax credit bill that was passed recently allowed a building pre-1936 to open themselves up to go after a credit. And the reason that they utilize those credits is when the developer, and we're very proud to have some people here who are investing in this community here, thank you for being here today. When somebody comes into a building or a development like we have in Racine, the first thing they look at is, can they make money on this development? Because if they can't, the whole thing will close down. So they look at a couple of options. What do I have that can offset the fact that I have to do a brownfield redevelopment and clean up the site? Or the fact that I have a bunch of asbestos and lead that I've got to clean up? Or simply that there are not big enough companies or opportunities to make this work right away. So their money is at risk. They use the credit to offset that risk. It allows them the opportunity to then marginalize all of that risk and say, well, I can do this now because I'm not putting as much risk into it. And when we're talking about risk, let's be honest, in Racine, the project is $60 million. Not a lot of people in the world that are saying, I'm going to write out a check for $60 million and hope to get the money back. So we try to use these credits and other things in partnership with the state of Wisconsin and the federal government to make these developments happen. But really what it takes is what Mayor Verwink just said. It's a leap of faith. And we try to help out as much as we can with that. So we're very proud of the state for doing the work that they did to pull the ban back, because as I said, we've seen an influx of new money coming into the state of Wisconsin. The reason for that is now we can compete against all those other states that had this credit that we didn't. So simply, developers were not coming into Wisconsin. More importantly, we have Wisconsin developers leaving the state to invest in other places. One of those mayors that is working with it, I want to have you talk, is the mayor of Kaukauna. So Gene, why don't you come up here and tell us about Kaukauna?
These historic tax credits, of course, is extremely important to Kaukauna. We have a large former underutilized and a vacant portion of the Thilmany mill. We refer to it back in Kaukauna as the Eagle Mill. That's what it was originally known as. This was a huge project, 88,000 square foot building, 3 floors, and sat empty for a number of years, totally underutilized, but a beautiful old structure. We have a developer now that has stepped forward, and he's spent a lot of his own money getting to this point, relies heavily on the state historic tax credits to make this project successful and to succeed. When the moratorium was put in place, everything came to a screeching halt. And because he was in limbo, he didn't know what was going to happen, what other impediments might be put upon him, could he move forward, was he going to lose all his capital that he invested in the project. Fortunately, the moratorium now has been lifted, and this project is going to be able to move forward. The city of Kaukauna is looking at leasing the entire second floor of this building, which is actually the ground floor. We're going to use up around 24,000 square feet of this building for our new public library. So this is going to be a huge benefit to our citizens of Kaukauna. It's going to be detrimental in job creation. He's got people now looking at a huge office complex on the top floor. It's a beautiful site overlooking the Fox River, and this is a very high need for our local small community. So, thank you.
The final thing for historic tax credits is it really not only allows for an infusion of capital to come into the state of Wisconsin from other areas and other investors, but it allows a new tax base, and it allows you to breathe life back into empty buildings, old historic buildings that were either contaminated or just lifeless at the time and not being utilized. So it helps our job opportunities, our tax base, and it creates new synergies in the cities, which are incredibly needed right now, especially in a time of high unemployment. So I want to open it up to the press and see if there's any questions from the press, and thank everybody again for being here tonight. Any questions? We'll make it easy.
I mean, I guess for us, I want to know specifically, like for central Wisconsin area, so you might not necessarily be able to speak to this directly, but what is it going to mean for our communities? What buildings, if any, do you guys know about that are planning on being restored?
Well, we've been talking with the mayors from around the state. Once the historic tax credit was passed, what they all started doing was then looking to investors and developers and showing them the plans that they had in place, which now new opportunities for investment are possible, for those of us that had already been talking to investors and developers, it allowed us a gateway into the opportunity. So really, for all of us, it allows opportunity. But I'd like to have Mayor Verwink talk about that a little bit. Mayor?
Yeah, so I think in places like Wisconsin Rapids, we often heard from people that were interested in rehabbing downtown buildings or historic buildings, but were very cost prohibitive previously. And I think for us, it allows the infusion of capital in ways that they would not have to expend it. So they're able to do more in the project than they would have done previously. And I think, in a downtown like ours, it takes just a minute to walk and to see opportunity. Some may think it's in decline, or it's dead, or it's not coming back. Well, it may not come back in its previous form, but it will come back. But a lot of these projects, again, would not potentially be viable without that. So I think just there's a number of examples right here in Wisconsin Rapids that we're very excited about, not only the lift of the ban, but the fact that there are people in the community, locals, that are interested in developing buildings and breathing life back into the buildings. Because we all know a strong core in a community like ours, having a river run right through the center of it, there's tremendous opportunity, and that potential is untapped. And so this potentially will kind of be a catalyst for future development.
Any other questions?
I was just going to ask also, has the city of Wisconsin Rapids applied for these grants already, for this money, this tax break, or how does that work?
It's administered to the developers. So the city would be working in partnership. Obviously, our downtown plan, our waterfront plan, does recognize development zones and buildings specifically in the downtown that would be that are kind of pinpointed for that future development. So no, the city has not. And to your question, but has definitely started to facilitate conversations from facade improvements to what other improvements and. Employment and housing, both are two things that go hand in hand in building a strong future for downtown. So we've got much of opportunity, and you can even ask the developers in the room about that opportunity because they're seeing it.
Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Well, it says that the moratorium is partially lifted.
Right.
So what does that exactly mean as opposed to being fully lifted?
What happened in the very beginning when they started talking about this portion of the credit, because remember that this can be matched with the federal credit as well. When they first started talking about it, their initial idea on how much this would cost the state of Wisconsin, because they have a share in the credit, was maybe 5 to 10 projects statewide. Well, when you're doubling and almost tripling that sheer number of projects, obviously the cost to the state of Wisconsin went up. And the WEDC took a step back and said, no, wait a minute. First of all, can we afford this? And second of all, let's balance the cost of that with the development. And if there's one thing that you find from developers, and I'm sure if you talk to these folks here, they'll probably mention the same thing. A developer is looking for consistency. They want consistency in whatever they're doing. And when that consistency stops, just like you heard from the mayor of Kaukauna, everybody pulls back. So what I think the state looked at, and I can't speak for the state, but what I think they looked at was, we have to balance the cost of this to us as a state versus the volume of money and the resources that are coming into the state, the developers that are moving ahead. For a city like Racine, we're taking 14 acres on the river that has basically been storage, underutilized, and the public never had access to it, to 750,000 square feet. 750,000 square feet under roof, 5 new companies, and a bike path that brings everybody back together again. That's $60 million that's now taxable. So we're gaining all that revenue, but more importantly, we're gaining a whole new section of the city. So all those things you have to weigh, and the state had to do that. So I think when they looked at it, they said, you know what, the benefits simply outweigh the costs right now.
So does that mean that on an unlimited amount of developers, is there like unlimited funds for people to kind of go in and do this? There's like no cap on it at all?
No, there's never unlimited funds, because if there were, we'd probably be going after a little bit more of them. But there's always a limit on the funds because the state's paying a portion of it. And then the actual credit is resold. But the fact is, whenever you're working on a project of this magnitude, whether it's small or large, you're always making sure that the developer has the wherewithal to do the project, and that the entire project is not resting on the credit. So there's a whole series of things that go into developments. This is just one tool that allows them to offset that risk that we talked about. So yeah, it's never unlimited, but at the same time, you don't want to stop the progress that's been made to date. And I think that's the biggest issue, is you really don't want to stop the progress that's been made. But the state has to weigh that. How much is it costing the state versus how much property tax revenue is it bringing in the long term? Anybody else? Any other mayors want to?
Oh, there's
Yeah,
others.
go ahead.
We try to use it up in Merrill. Some of you from Wausau know of our old Lincoln House project downtown. The mayor said that funds are limited, and yes, they are. There's a cap on how much you're going to spend every year. And a lot of times the number of projects applying outnumber what's available, so they score them. On that project, we came in 2 below the cutoff, so we didn't get it. Unfortunately, we had a freeze up and water leak that pretty much sealed the fate of that building. But I'll just say that this tax credit financing is just a great tool. It's been proven all over the country. It's more cost effective to renovate than it is to tear down and start from new. And with some of the smaller municipalities that don't attract the big developers for redevelopment, this is definitely a good tool to keep our downtown, our business districts viable.
And don't forget about the historic character. You know, if you look at the old houses and the old buildings, they don't build them like that anymore. And there's an elegance to those buildings that people are trying to retain. There's also the history that you try to retain. Anything else? Okay. Well, I think it was a great move by the mayor and his team to create the white wall here and then start having people throw out ideas. Because this is the synergy that you have that allows developers and investors to consider what's going on and what the feel of the city is, and that's allowing them to maybe see if there's some options there for them or some opportunities. So thanks everybody for being here today, and we really appreciate your time, and we're going to get to our meeting, and then we're going to enjoy the great city of Wisconsin Rapids. So thanks.